See My Ability, the podcast of the ARC, Southern Maryland. In previous episodes of See Me, See My Ability, we told stories of how others advocated for us and how we advocate for ourselves. This episode, we honor Women's History Month and focus how the women in our lives, like our parents and grandparents plus teachers, have spoken out to give those of us with physical or intellectual challenges a chance to break out of isolation and enjoy the rest of what society has to offer. You'll be hearing the distinct voice of Cheryl Knott, who lives in one of the ARC Southern Maryland's group homes in St. Mary's County. Let our conversation teach you that even though some of us need extra attention and help, we all have valuable stories to tell. Cheryl was born at a time when there were few first aid services or ambulances. They were not available much in rural communities in America. She is the youngest and sole surviving child of rival families in the unincorporated town of Chaptico. Cheryl was 65 years old when I talked with her. Also heard on this recording is the voice of a volunteer researcher for the Historical Society of St. Mary's County, a longtime resident, Joan Wise. She helps validate Cheryl's memories. Back in 1959, a local mortuary was the ambulance service in St. Mary's.
I was a preemie baby. I was 3 pounds. I was 3 months early. My mother had bad blood pressure problems. And at the time, they didn't even know that I would live a day. And so what they did, my mother had to stay in bed the whole time she was carrying me. She was 3 months before she even knew she had me. And I threatened to come in the world before my time, and she told me, don't go back, it's not time. So I behaved and went back. So she had a very difficult time. And the only way that they had medical treatment was the undertaker, Mr. Matney. He was the only one that had the ambulance service in St. Mary's. So he waited for me to be born and took a portable incubator in the front seat and took me to Washington Hospital, the Children's Hospital.
Does that make sense, that there would be only one?
One in 1959, he was the only ambulance service, no matter what kind of problem. He had the hearse, and he did the ambulance service. He told you, he got you one way or the other. That was his saying.
They drove you from this county up to Washington, D.C.?
Yes.
Wow. Boy.
And I stayed up there for 3 months. And they were very concerned that I would have severe handicaps and everything else being small, because I'm 16 years after my sister. I had an older sister that was 16 years difference. And she didn't believe that my mother was going to have another baby. After 16 years, she passed out. She was at the St. Mary's Academy over here. And
surprise!
My father come back from the doctor visit. You're going to have a new brother and sister. And she just passed out, and my godmother had to catch her. She said, old people don't do that. You know, this is what I got all the time. And so they had to take me up there, and they had me in the incubator 48 days. They said either I wouldn't be able to talk, I wouldn't be able to walk.
Nowadays, Cheryl uses a walker to get around after having hip replacement surgery in 2024. She recalls that years after she was born, it was determined that doctors gave her mother a drug called thalidomide. The National Institutes of Health says thalidomide was a widely used drug in the 1950s and early 1960s for the treatment of nausea in pregnant women who were morning sickness. To quote NIH, it became apparent in the 1960s thalidomide treatment resulted in severe birth defects in thousands of children. Cheryl Cheryl's mother, whose unmarried or maiden name was Ellis, insisted that she come home from the hospital to St. Mary's County on Mother's Day of '59. Cheryl was born with defective hip sockets, spent much of her childhood in braces and casts, but she didn't grow up using a walker, even though she uses one now. And if you do a web search for the name Knott, spelled Knott, in St. Mary's County, you'll find a whole lot of them, all related in one way or another to Cheryl. There are other legacy St. Mary's County family names along Cheryl's family tree on both her mother's and father's side of the family, names like Bailey and Surecliff, or as some pronounce it, Surecliffy. When Cheryl was a child, education managers at that time labeled her as having a mental disorder. But as you listen to Cheryl, you'll hear that she was taught how to spell and properly express herself, from the time she was 2 years old. She learned numbers and manners and how to carry and comport herself in public from her mother's mother. A little bit about when you started learning your ABCs. Who was your primary teacher when you were?
Both of them. Both my parents and my grandmother.
So they started to teach you how to read and write when you were...
I was only 2 because my grandmother gave me a set of wooden blocks, and when I needed something, she'd tell me, "Proper ladies do not do that. We spell our words out. We pronounce them just so."
Tough lady.
And you didn't go past her with that. If you said, like if you wanted a soft drink, she would not let you say soda. That was not proper. She would have the carbonated drink. She would always straighten you out, no matter what the language was. She was in the little pillbox hat and gloves, and she'd go to church and sit in the chair by me and work off and on.
Listen as Cheryl explains how her mother advocated early on for her to be in public school with those who were her same age. So your grandmother and your parents taught you how to spell and to speak as succinctly as possible?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you go to a public school ever?
I went to a public school, but they put me in special ed. I went first grade, second grade, then they put me in a special class for the rest of the years that I had.
So they separated you because of your physical handicap?
Mm-hmm.
Even though you might have a physical handicap, it doesn't mean you intellectually weren't.
Back then they did.
But that's what they did.
Because the principal said I would not learn any more than a third grade. I just put a block in a round circle, and she said I had a mental thing. And my teachers were fighting to get me with regular children. But they said I couldn't have the physical part of it, with the way that I would learn, because they didn't believe in escorting you or helping you. You had to do it yourself to a class. And the others were telling me about high school and all like that, and I wound up in my teenage years going to special ed. And I really got upset when they sent me to Felix Johnson.
Explain.
Felix Johnson, everybody was going to Chapticon, Great Mills, all these high schools around here. And I had a set of twins that were born 2 months before me, and they were telling me about the fancy clothes they were going to get and what you do when you go to high school. I couldn't understand it. And I had the math, I had the reading, I had everything, just like they did. And this teacher signs a thing that I have a mental disability. And I was thrown into a handicapped school at 18.
Where was it?
It was down in Lexington Park.
Okay.
Where the tobacco players are?
No, I have to be honest and say no.
You know where the flat tops were?
Mm-hmm.
I was in those for a long time.
Okay.
That was a special ed school till they built Green Hollow. And I went to this high school. It was a dilapidated high school. And we had to go out and go across to have our lunch. Across a bridge. It's no bigger than your chair to walk over the top with a handicap. I didn't even have a walker then.
Cheryl said she went to kindergarten with her best friends, and she was in public school until high school. It broke her heart, as she thought local officials didn't want her to be seen.
I even went to regular kindergarten thanks to my mother. And they were worried about how I was going to adapt. I was so tickled when I went to kindergarten. But in teenage years, they wanted me not to be seen or be in a regular class for some reason. They thought I was going to learn this, I wasn't going to learn that. Thank God I had a teacher. I would love her till the day I die. We had a little teacher that was African American. Her name was Willine Anthony.
What was her last name?
Willine Anthony.
Anthony?
Yes.
Okay.
She was a little teeny thing, maybe 60 pounds soaking wet. She come in there. She said, I don't care what Mama and Daddy tell you. We're not here to pick up for you. We're not going to pick your butt up. We're not going to do this. And you're going to do what you can. And she taught us math and everything like in a regular high school. Even made the regular checkbook. Took a copy of her checkbook and made a copy for all of us. You know when you had to write checks for everything.
Mm-hmm.
She taught us how to do that so that we would survive, make change and all that. I still had trouble with change in time, but she taught us how to do it. And the one thing that really broke it, we went to a restaurant. We had saved money. I mean, it wasn't expensive like it was now. You could get $1 soft drink, you could do this. And she said, I'm taking you down to Golden Corral. About 3 of us were in walkers and everything. She said, we're going to go out and eat. And they sat us at the table. And nobody had seen a handicapped person with a walker, and they didn't know how to act. They didn't even want to put the tables together for us to eat. And the man in charge come over. He said, are you sure they will know how to eat in public? You know, he was very rude. And she said, she got that money that we had got, you know. She said, is this any different? Is this money any different than the people that's in your restaurant now? Is this money any different than the money that I have in my hand? So they have a right to have a table. So she busted that barrier down. And he finally decided to put the table together.
We'll explore more of Cheryl Knott's lineage and stories that were important to her family in our next episode of See Me, See My Ability. This episode was vetted with the help of the St. Mary's County Historical Society. We invite you to visit and support the Society at its historic Tudor Place mansion in Leonardtown, Maryland. We invite you to support this podcast by leaving us a review on the podcast app of your choice, and to please contact us through email at info@arcsomd.org. See Me, See My Ability, the podcast of the ARC, Southern Maryland. I'm Rita Rich.